Hi, I'm Jesper from Palo Alto Networks.
Jan from Nixu.
And we're going to talk a bit about some of the challenges that we see a lot of organizations are faced with. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining this fireside chat. This is going to be an interesting chat for sure. When you bring Jan and I, two people that are very passionate about cybersecurity, and we represent organizations that share the vision around making sure that organizations are in a more secure state than when we met them, right? Securing tomorrow for them as well. That is our passion, that is our ambition. And in this fireside chat, we're going to talk a bit about some of the challenges that we know organizations are faced with, and some of our recommendations as to what do you need to focus on, right? And coming into why trusted partnerships are essential for their success.
Hello, yes, I'm Jan, and I'm heading the managed services here at Nixu, now part of PANW Group. But great to be here.
I think we're going to have a great conversation today around, we've talked a few times around this already, how organizations are faced with different challenges, some coming from the complexity in their digital landscape, some are coming from the lack of efficiency in their current, tool stack that they use for their security operations, right? And I think we both agreed that we need to do something to address the complexity that they're all suffering from, Indeed. Right? And I think one of the talking points that I typically bring to organizations is, well, if you're happy with I call it the Frankenstein model, where you have, you take a lot of different things and you're trying to get the best out of it. And I usually say that you might be able to make it walk and talk, and you get something out of it, but you'll never make it able to actually dance and sing, right? Yeah. And that's where you want to move towards, right? Yeah. That more integrated security solution, right?
And that's exactly what we see as a managed services provider as well. That only say 5 years back, it was the Frankenstein model. So, or best of breed kind of pick and choose the tools of choice and then try to bring it all together. And of course, the seams were at the heart of that. And I kind of understand the evolution. So why it became like that. Yeah. But of course, now we're looking more at integrated ecosystem solutions that kind of help us a lot, because then you have pre-integrated set of tools that play well together, and exactly. Then you build on that. So it's a whole different game. But.
Yeah, and exactly that part about having, you might have over a period of time, you've chosen the best solutions for a certain and very specific problem, usually, right? Yep. And then over time, that actually grows the complexity, and it also creates the gaps. So you might miss something. And the worst time of realization that you're missing something is during the time of crisis, right? You want to be a bit proactive in that approach and integrate better. And if you look at all the other arenas of software and technology in general, integrations has been the solution to create more efficiency and reduce the amount of skills that you need as well to work on it, right? And I think that's also one of the reasons why we see a lot of organizations are moving more and more towards having managed security services in there, because they help highlight all of those gaps, as well as give you that increased efficiency without you actually needing to do a lot more on both the people, the skill side, and the technology side. You get assistance in determining that, right?
Absolutely. And then maybe to continue to adding on top of that, then you of course have the normalization of data that you bring into the monitoring environment, and sheer amount of false positives and benign positives and all sorts of that. That again is kind of greatly reduced, or the complexity for the analyst is reduced greatly if you have one set of pre-integrated tools and data points. Maybe more importantly even than just the tools, but the fact that the data is already normalized, and you kind of can trust that whatever I see in this dashboard is the same that I see on the other one, and they are already cross-correlated and so forth. So
Yeah, and I think to that point, you mentioned CM earlier as well, right? That a lot of organizations are faced with the alert fatigue that we've been talking about in the security industry for quite some time now, that you get a lot of alerts, but it's hard to distinguish which one should we prioritize in this time, right? And especially when times are tough and, everybody has heard the phrase, you got to do more with less, right? You have to focus on your costs and your spending in general. But at the same time, you're doing more and more digital, creating more and more of these events and alerts that you need to prioritize. And it's impossible to act on unless you have something that ties everything together, stitching that full story, helps you prioritize, and in many cases have someone who's an expert at exactly that, prioritization, because I think that is going to be one of the most important roles going forward in cybersecurity. Who is able to prioritize, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then again, also kind of coming back to the Frankenstein model a bit, then of course to kind of after the kind of SIEM plus then the sensor systems kind of evolution, the next kind of natural stage was of course all the machine learning and AI driven, but still best of breed solutions. And from a MSSP point of view, that was maybe the toughest times of all because you get this kind of artificial intelligence telling you that with some probability something happened. But it's a black box. And so there's no way of really analyzing it other than going again back to the SIEM and pull in all the data from all the various systems and try to figure out, so is it what this thing is telling me, is it true or false? Really tall order. So there I think also going forward with the more kind of advances in technology and AI and stuff, this will become a crucial part of it. So there needs to be decent amount of kind of transparency in whatever the model is telling you that why is it doing that and these types of things, because that has created a lot of burden on the likes of ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of the areas where Palo Alto Networks is moving a lot in terms of how we apply AI, but also how we can, with the use of precision AI, the combination of machine learning and deep learning, and then on top of it, add the generative AI so we make it easier for the operators as well. But we provide the traceability that is needed today to how did we actually determine that this is the right priority from a technology perspective, and this is where the human takes over and does the final verdict, you could almost say. And then again, what is our confidence, right? Because I remember sitting in incidents where the senior leadership team, they were always, coming to me and saying, all right, so when are we back? Are we done with the incident now? And my level of confidence varies depending on how many tools I have to look at and, who do I have backing me up as well? Who's my partner in this? Can I ask someone else? And they can come in and say, all right, yes, but we're in the clear, I need a Jan I can call who can tell me that, yes, we're good, right? And here's the evidence.
Right. And where it becomes really tough is then when he also brings his legal advisor with him.
Yes.
So that's a separate topic.
Yes. Isn't it lovely when you're standing there and you feel like you're under pressure from the business, and then you have the executive team coming in. They have a lot of great questions, right?
Indeed.
And I think one of the toughest things sometimes is to be proactive in that and tell them, could you please get out of the room while we work? And then I will come back to you with sort of the executive approach. I think that's where technology is moving as well, and the partnerships that you have, for instance, with MSP partners, that you can now actually do the proactive part and talk to the executive team before you're in the time of crisis. Tell them, this is the expectations you can have on us. This is how we reach the confidence levels required for us to go back to you. Maybe even, create the executive summary before something happens. Right?
Yeah. And there again, the technology can help us a lot with summarizing stuff and making it easily ingestible for normal people and so forth. And one thing to add to that as well is I think this is a big role of us as well as the service provider and kind of going maybe into the topic a bit as well as that what's the role of humans in future when AI takes over everything. And I think this is a big part of where we need people going forward as well, is to kind of engage and create kind of confidence that yes, we're on top of it. It will take a bit of time, but people here in the background are doing a great job and investigating on whatever happened and so forth. And meanwhile, I'll keep you occupied and be busy with other stuff so that you don't need to kind of hyperventilate over the fact that is anything happening in the background. So, and it of course comes down to relationship management at the end of the day and
Absolutely.
And partnership and trust and so forth, and that we need to establish in the future as well on an individual level.
Exactly, and I think exactly to that point, the trusted partnership is a key element here, right? Where we see a lot of organizations where they're focused on building certain level of let's have security capabilities in-house. And I understand a lot of the drivers behind it, but at the same time, what I think they're missing out of is a lot of the organizations that we meet are faced with, either the risk of burnout, again, back to the alert fatigue is one thing, but if you have several incidents in a row, how many people do you actually have that can take over from each other? Are you running 72-hour incident? Do you have the people to actually cover for 72 hours at a maximum capacity at the same time, right? And I think that's one of the areas where you need to consider a managed security partner or a managed service provider, depending on how you wanna phrase it, right? But I think that's one of the areas where you need to consider it. And that is during the time of crisis. But I also see it from another angle. And what I've used in the past as well is I wanted a broader perspective that I could bring to the organization. And by having a trusted partner in my sort of relationship map, I can reach out to someone. I can get a broader perspective than just from the organization where I sit. And that gives me a better talking point as well when I meet with my peers in the organization, but also peers outside the organization, right? Exactly. So we grow together. And I think that's the power of the partnerships as well, right?
Yeah, and you can kind of get benchmark as well to kind of support your view there that are we doing enough or not and so forth. Another aspect I kind of want to add to that, it's a great topic you bring up this with, do you really have the kind of people it takes to kind of run a lengthy incident or investigation or a recovery, not to mention that, it's and then you come into the fact that, most organizations, at least here in the Nordics, it's not, they don't do it in-house anyway. So it's kind of, it's outsourced. You have a bunch of IT service providers and others backing you up there who actually need to play a big part in the remediation process. Do they have the capabilities as well? And that becomes a big if really, and also comes to the point of integration, but from a slightly different angle. So of course, in order for that kind of a holistic network of actors to kind of efficiently work together in the time of crisis, you need to, prior to the incident, hopefully establish a working process integration layer on top of it, so that we know how to work together and interact with all the actors when stuff hits the fan.
Exactly. And that's interesting because we've managed to touch integrations in both people now in terms of relations and in processes. We need to integrate the processes and in technology as well, right? So we're bringing together all three layers here in terms of that. And I think we can even go as far as saying, if we talk about the traditional layers and strategic, the tactical and the operational, it's the same thing. We need integrations with the strategic level to figure out what is our journey, where are we headed with this, again, the proactive approach. What do we want as an outcome? What do we predict? What are our expectations when something happens? How can we respond and for how long can we? What are the activities as well, right? And when you move down to the sort of the intermediate levels and the tactical levels of this is the way we start to process everything, what are we doing, from a contractual perspective and a procurement perspective as well? It becomes a lot easier when you work in a trusted partnership relationship, right? So, excellent.
Indeed. And then, of course, maybe moving ahead to a bit separate topic, but we were now into the times of crisis in a way. But of course, then it becomes a question as well that, okay, do we really want to have continuous crisis after crisis? So should we rather kind of do proactively protecting stuff and not be in constant crisis? And then we come to the point of a kind of a continuous posture management and how do you do that in an efficient manner, automation, orchestration, and again, kind of looking at the whole ecosystem involved in that. And of course, there's as we already touched on the kind of security tool ecosystem, but on top of that, you have all the service providers in the IT landscape, and not to mention OT landscape, and a totally different thing there. But coming back to where we started with the complexity, really, it's really complex, and it's kind of mostly comes down to your point about contracts, agreements, trust. having a kind of a true incentive in the whole network of actors to kind of work together to do better security at an affordable price, and that's far from trivial, I would say.
Oh yeah, I fully agree. And again, with the posture assessments, when you bring that up, posture and maturity assessments are so vital to get everybody on the same track as well in the organization, right? So a lot of the organizations that I have the privilege to work with, they have very, I'll call it variations of understanding of what cybersecurity is, where it should be done, and who should own it, right? Because I think it's pretty much everybody's ownership in an organization. We all have a role to play in that, right? But it takes a bit of time to reach that point. And I think doing proactive assessments is a good approach to having that conversation. And exactly what you say, to get us away from being in the constant crisis mode almost, right? Because how long have we known that in IT, right? We have firefighters in the IT departments. Even in the OT departments, we're becoming more and more firefighters as well, right? So, I mean, we need to get out of that. And the approach here is proactive, right? Go in and work with it, work with the communication that you are wrapping around cybersecurity, how you deal with cybersecurity. And I think posture and maturity assessments is a fantastic way to go in that area.
Yeah, as well as, of course, we need to learn from the incidents and do kind of continuous hardening of the environment, all of these stuff. Coming back to really old and boring stuff like patch management, but still looking at organizations out there, I think that's where we have the kind of biggest gap still today is to do proper patch management, really. And again, it also ties back to what you said about prioritization there. But again, if you have like 400,000 vulnerabilities, so what are you going to focus on?
Which one is the next one, right?
Exactly. And then you need a lot of kind of context and understanding about the whole setup, really, and what's important, what's not, and what's the exposure of it, and so forth. So.
Exactly.
And there again, the kind of the integrated tool stack is kind of a crucial part of it to kind of support that thinking and process.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point in terms of how we use technology more and more to help us prioritize is going to be essential, right? Because it would not be uncommon to have several hundreds, maybe even thousands of vulnerabilities in your technology infrastructure. But figuring out which one is important to actually address right now, because there is no way you're going to be able to touch all of them, right? Exactly. Which one are important now? We can use technology to help determine this with the proper integrations, having threat intelligence feed it directly into the technology. That provides a bit of context. Obviously, we still need the humans to come in and provide the business context. Is it the right timing, for instance, to do a full patch if it takes 2 hours of operational downtime? There might be good times and bad times for doing that, right? So we still need humans to take the business context and the timing into it, right? But technology can help us a long way in terms of determining should this be prioritized or not, right? I agree. And that's, again, back to the expertise as well. You might have the best tools available. And I had the conversation just recently with a very large global organization where we were talking about having maybe 30 security tools. They had a lot more, but we just narrowed it down and said, let's do 30. If you have 30 security tools in your technology stack and you insist on managing all of that yourself and looking at all of the different dashboards themselves, how much skills do you actually need to be able to support that? What do you do if you want to hire a new one to the team? Do you ask them to be, proficient in all of these tools? Or do you select one or two? I mean, that's impossible to do work with as well, right?
Excellent point you make there. And for the likes of ourselves, again, so we can't work with all the tools out there. It's impossible exactly because of that reason as a service provider as well. If we kind of try to support and have the kind of top-notch skills on everything out there, it becomes just impossible. So,
exactly.
So we need to kind of narrow it down and again, also integrate. So kind of to, even though there might be bespoke solutions out there, but then those need to be integrated into the kind of the core ecosystem rather than kind of having to know two separate solutions and so forth. So.
And then, of course, while you have the focus on primary, the core, you could say, the core security deliveries from a technology perspective, obviously the target here is to be really good at integrating with all the different data streams that you're going to ingest, right? Being able to take in all the data, make it actionable, right? So one thing I always talk about is this: having visibility is great, but if you can't act on it, then it's actually really bad, right? You want to have visibility with actionability on top. And I think that's, again, where the trusted partnership comes into play, where when you bring the right technology in that's able to ingest the data streams, create actionable visibility for you, and present it to the business as well, so that can help them take the future decisions as well, right?
Exactly. And then bringing it kind of back from the more strategic level that you were now addressing to the kind of operational level, then of course you have the same problem. But if you're an analyst or something and sitting on the SOC in the night, and it's the same problem. You see events flowing in, you get an alert, and it's you need to have the playbooks, and it needs to be actionable, right?
Exactly.
And of course that's another kind of huge trend we see in the out there in the wild. So is that the time we have to kind of take action on the incident is kind of squeezed to be minimum now, because the attackers are utilizing advanced tools and technologies as well. And thus, if it used to be weeks or months, the kind of window of opportunity, now it's kind of hours or minutes.
Exactly.
Coming then to automation as well. So of course you need to have the actionable data points to start with in the first place, but then of course we need to have really rapid and good solutions to respond to them as well. And that's where I think, again, we have still a lot of work to do as well in the industry.
Oh, I fully agree. And to be honest, I think automation is the only way forward, right? Because it is growing, as you said, it's growing in both cyber criminal activity. We already talked about the complexity, right? We have requirements coming in. Regulators are pushing more and more into. NIS2 mentions a 24-hour notification, for instance. I still see a lot of organizations that they are not able to detect something and determine whether or not it's actually going to have a significant impact on them within 24 hours. This could take them 3, 4, 5 days to determine, right?
Indeed.
But the regulations stipulate 24 hours, right? So that calls for an action as well, right? And as you said,
of course, also whether it becomes a major thing with a major impact or not is also highly dependent on whether you kind of are able to react early enough.
Yes.
You might avoid the whole thing if you're fast, but if you start pondering around a question for a couple of days, then it's going to be severe, yes. Yeah.
Or, even back to the skill sets again, if you don't have the right people at the right time, right? If you need someone to do, let's say you in the OT environments, it's typical a lot of physical on-site activities. If you need to drive for 4 hours, it takes 4 hours out of the response phase, right? That's going to be expensive. But you also have a lot of other cases where you're waiting for a decision. I've seen a lot of incidents where the processes are not aligned, or you don't know what to do with it, so you sit and wait for something. So you might have seen something happening, and then it just grows in impact. It moves from a benign or minimal that you could have done or done a few things to prevent, and then moves into significant impact, right? Which is really, really bad if you don't have that lined out as well.
And of course, in the OT environment, it could be a matter of life and death even.
And that's my growing concern as well, right? We're moving closer into this connected world where now we have safety that we really need to care for. We've always done it in the OT environment, but sort of as a secluded thing. We didn't bring it into the enterprise IT. Today, it's fully connected, right? Sometimes it's even OT to cloud, right? It's straight up into the heavens.
Yes. And often without anyone being really aware of it.
Exactly.
That's maybe the most scary part.
It might be a business decision over here, and a technology department provides connectivity, and then security sits in the middle, and they haven't seen anything. It just goes over the head, right?
Indeed.
No, I think, again, back to the having the actionable visibility and being able to use that not just in time of crisis, as you said, but also proactively. Because when you start thinking of the security architecture as, I would almost call it a data visualization platform as well, right? When you look at where do you get data from, what is the quality of the data, and how does that lead to a decision for you, not just in security, but in operational efficiency? Because that ties straight into the business ambitions as well, right? What is the business strategy? What do we want to achieve? And just like I do, that most businesses today, they have digital in pretty much anything in their business strategy, right? It's about connectivity, being able to do more with less, also in terms of technology, and then AI, right? Everybody wants to do something with AI and data and big data analytics or whatever we call it, right? And that challenges the technology departments as well and forces them to do something different, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's, I think, an important point you make there, to do less with more, more with less, sorry.
Yeah.
So the other way around, but so of course, with the kind of attack surface rapidly expanding because of going digital and so forth, so of course, also security-related expenditure is growing at a rapid pace for many organizations, or then you're left behind and have a huge risk appetite, which isn't great either. So we need to somehow address this kind of a dilemma altogether, and there I don't really see any other way than a lot more automation than what we do today. And probably with the assistance of the AIs also going forward, so more and more.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a natural transition, right? To put on top of, now we have great data. We've done all the integrations. Now I'm talking about the perfect world here, right? We have the quality data. We have the great integrations. And now we move into, we are able to do data analytics, and we're able to act across the whole ecosystem that we work with. But the next natural step in that is create more efficiency. And one of the ways we can do that is by leveraging both, of course, the deep learning and the machine learning that we've been using for 10, 15 years, right? But applying AI on top of it, so the generative AI approach to it, where we make it much easier to use as well, right? Moving away from, now security doesn't have to be, or even network operations or other area of IT operation doesn't have to be, the green command line hammering away, the really hardcore specialists in the corner. It can also be the people that are really good at the user interface and understand how data moves across the organizations. How does it flow through the applications? How does the applications actually perform, right? That suddenly caters in as well.
Absolutely, and that, of course, you can see already now that happening. That, for instance, the kind of briefing the executives when you had the incidents that you were talking about earlier. So there, of course, already now you get a lot of help from the generative AI stuff. That you can please summarize everything we've dealt with for a couple of days for an executive, really. And of course, it's not perfect. It makes kind of a minor mistakes here and there, but it's again a lot more quicker to just kind of brief it through and kind of correct the minor details there and then shoot it out, rather than trying to kind of invent it all by yourself.
Exactly.
And I think that's where you kind of will see a lot of efficiency benefits going forward. So.
Yeah, and I can see that it's one of the requests we have on the technology side from a lot of customers is, have sort of the high-level overview dashboard where you can almost call it, and this is the executive summary, but you're right on the technology. So if you have I would almost say, if you have the mental capabilities and the skills required to dive deeper in, it should allow you to, but consider it your executive summary, right? So having that approach as well from a technology perspective makes it a lot easier for the operator, because now, back to the example of having, the executives coming in, the legal counsel coming in and standing right behind you, watching you, what's your level of confidence, how good are we doing? Now we can just, if you look up here at this monitor, this is your executive summary. It's live. It's showcasing exactly what we're seeing, what we're doing. You can see the playbooks we're running when we do the automation piece, where the operator takes action. If we need a decision, we will happily turn around and ask you. But up until that point, you can please look at the executive summary. I know it's not that easy, but again, the perfect world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, to a large extent, if you would have a kind of one organization, kind of self-contained with all the bells and whistles and the IT infrastructure and everything on top of it, you could be there pretty much already today. Then, of course, you have all the typically you have a whole kind of a huge backpack of legacy and stuff, and the kind of service provider network around you and stuff, and that's where it becomes complicated, of course. And it would be great to have all the SaaS systems and cloud services also a part of that, but then you maybe can't have that level of integration quite yet. So,
I would say it's coming, and then we'll see where it takes us, right?
Indeed.
No, but you're absolutely right, and I think for me, when I think about the past and dealing with incidents again across a lot of different areas and a lot of different technologies, and what I always found working really, really well was having the triad of here's the organization, here's the security team, and here's the security partner that we work with. The security partner provides me with the CISO overview. This is what I need to know at this point in time to take my business-related decisions. I bring that to the executive team. They ask me questions. I take that back. I have that with the security partner who sits on the insights. So I don't need to, back to your comment earlier as well, I don't need to be concerned about the nitty-gritty parts because that's being taken care of. And that's where I think the trust as well comes into play, right? They understand the complexity, they understand the business, and they understand what should be prioritized. And what I bring is, back to what I said earlier as well, is the business context and the business timing based on the conversation I have with the executive team in the organization, right? I think that's as close as I can come from a CISO position to the perfect world. This is where I want to be, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that's where we are kind of investing a lot of on the process integration stuff as well, because again, kind of from the CISO perspective, you want to have the overview, you want to be informed, you want to be on top of it, but you don't want to be the choke point in everything. So it's kind of sitting in between when different parties are communicating to each other, which happens a lot still today.
Yeah.
So that's where we need to kind of step up the game and make sure that we can engage directly with whomever is the appropriate counterpart, coming back to understanding the context around it and asset information and so forth. So who is actually managing this server or the application on top of it, and the business kind of on top of that and so forth, to understand that who should I engage with from the SOC perspective now in the middle of the night. And once you do that, then of course make sure that it's as rapid as possible. So not having ticket ping pong going on there for weeks before we kind of engage on it and have the actual remediation and put in place. But still having the CISO and his team kind of up to speed and fully knowledgeable of what's going on, and that's really important as well.
I will consider, sort of these three high level I always talk about cyber operational resilience, right? I talk about organizations having capabilities to withstand an attack, to operate while they're under an attack, and to be able to recover from an attack. And if I'm being fair, the organizations I see today, most of the organizations I see today, might not be very good at all three of them. They might have a preference in a few of them. But I think I see more organizations focusing on the middle part, right? Operating while under an attack is, back to the firefighting approach. And I think we need to balance it. And I think that's where organizations today potentially should focusing on is the cyber resilience component. And I think they should reach out to a trusted partner for getting to that point where they're both proactive as well as having the reactive capabilities, but focused on the learnings as well, not just your learnings, but learnings from the cybersecurity community as well. And that is one of the greater benefits of having a trusted security partner, a managed service provider as well, that comes in and bring them more perspective, more learnings than they could ever derive themselves. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's you're creating a really good business case for my services as well. Thank you.
Well, you and I can obviously continue this conversation for a long time, but if we want to but if we want to summarize a bit and sort of narrow it down to certain topics, I think we started out with complexity, right? And I think one of the key takeaways for a lot of organizations should be, if you're not actively reducing your complexity, you will see more and more challenges arise, right? We need to simplify certain things, and that talks into the integrations piece, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, Jan, we talked about cyber criminals activities as well.
Yeah, exactly. So what we also discussed was that the kind of the time to react and remediate the problems that come in at an ever increasing pace gets shorter day by day. So we also need to be much more efficient in the responses of it as well. And that requires we need to integrate all three levels again that we discussed: people, tools, processes. And then we, of course, need to automate stuff so that not everything needs to happen with waking someone up in the middle of the night, but we can take immediate action as well.
Exactly. So for everybody who's joined our little chat here, we want to say thank you for joining, and rest assured, you probably found it interesting since you joined us. We will have more interesting stuff for you going forward as well. Jesper from Palo Alto Networks says thank you. I think Jan from Nixu.
Thank you.